Hello everyone, today we'll be discussing failure to thrive. So one thing you need to know is failure to thrive is not a disease, it is a descriptive term that is given to malnourished infants and young children who fail to meet expected standards of growth, okay? So this term is given to infants and young children who fail to meet expected standards of growth. FTT is often diagnosed by weight that falls or remains below the third percentile for age. Please take note. Weight that falls or remains below the third percentile for age decreases, crossing two major percentile lines on the growth chart over time, or is less than 80% of the median weight for the height of the child. And failure to thrive, it's a descriptive term rather than a diagnosis, which I've already mentioned. FTT should be distinguished from isolated short stature, in which height is the most abnormal growth parameter. In children with FTT, weight is usually affected before length, which is usually affected before the head circumference. And initially in FTT, head circumference is initially spared. So one thing you need to know is the first thing that's affected in failure to thrive is the weight, that's followed by length, and at the end we get head circumference that will be affected. However, initially it's spared, okay? So causes of failure to thrive. So we've got inorganic causes and organic causes, okay? So inorganic or psychosocial etiologies, these are the most common cause, which is 80%, okay? So this is basically as a result of a disturbed parent-child bond that results in inadequate calorie intake, retention, or emotional deprivation. And organic etiologies suggest underlying organ system pathology, infection, chromosomal disorders, or systemic illness. So inorganic, it's also like psychosocial etiologies, okay? So this has to do with the maternal-child bond, the social economic status, etc. Okay, and organic etiologies, this refers to pathologies. Okay, so let's look at those. So inorganic causes are poor formula preparation, such as feeding a diluted formula, poor feeding techniques, such as misperception or lack of knowledge about diet and feeding, child abuse and neglect, parental immaturity, maternal depression, alcohol and drug use, marital discord, mental illness, family violence, poverty, isolation from support system. Causes of failure to thrive. So environmental, this is basically our inorganic or psychosocial causes, okay, that you've already mentioned. Then our organic causes, we've divided them into systems. So gastrointestinal causes include cystic fibrosis, celiac disease, other malabsorption syndromes, gastrointestinal reflux. Congenital or anatomic causes include chromosomal abnormalities, congenital heart disease, GI abnormalities such as pyloric stenosis, malrotation, vascular rings, upper airway obstruction, dental caries, congenital immunodeficiency syndromes. Infectious causes include HIV, tuberculosis, hepatitis, UTIs, chronic sinusitis, parasitic infections. Metabolic causes include thyroid disease, adrenal or pituitary disease, amino aciduria, organic aciduria, galactosemia. Neurologic causes include CP, hypothalamic and other central nervous system tumors, hypotonia syndrome, neuromuscular diseases, degenerative and storage diseases. Renal causes include chronic renal failure, renal tubular acidosis, UTIs. Hematologic causes include sickle cell disease, iron deficiency, anemia. So clinical features. So children affected with failure to thrive, they usually present with poor growth, often associated with poor development and cognitive functioning. The degree of failure to thrive is usually measured by calculating weight, height, and weight for height as percentage of the median value for age based on appropriate growth charts. So diagnosis and clinical manifestations. So we usually begin with our history and exam, okay? So a medical history should include prenatal history, prematurity, birth size, what was the weight, length, and head circumference at birth, as well as family and travel history. Indicators of medical diseases such as vomiting, diarrhea, Fever, respiratory symptoms, and fatigue should be noted. So basically what you need to take note is we're trying to rule out our causes, okay, our etiologies. A careful diet history is essential. Lactation problems in breastfed infants and improper formula preparations are frequent causes of growth failure early in infancy. So you need to ask the mother or the parents that how do you prepare the formula, how do you feed them, okay? It is crucial to evaluate intake of solid foods and liquids for all the infants and children. Also, due to parental dietary beliefs, some children have inappropriately restricted diets. Others drink excessive amounts of fruit juice, leading to malabsorption or anorexia. So you need to ask on the child's daily meal schedule, the timing, the frequency, the location. Mealtime practices, especially distractions that interfere with completing meals, can influence growth. A complete psychosocial assessment of the child and family is required. Child factors also need to be asked on, such as the temperament of the child's development, parental factors such as depression, domestic violence, social isolation, mental retardation, substance abuse, and environmental and societal factors such as poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, lead toxicity. All of this may contribute to growth failure. A complete physical examination and developmental screening should assess signs of inflicted injury, oral or dental problems, indicators of pulmonary, cardiac, or GI disease, and dysmorphic features that may suggest a genetic or teratogenic cause for growth failure. A complete neurological exam may reveal spasticity or hypotonia, which can have untoward effects on feeding and growth. Then you look at physical findings that are related to malnutrition that include decreased subcutaneous fat, decreased muscle mass, dermatitis, hepatomegaly, killosis, or edema. Additionally, children with FTT have more otitis media, respiratory, and GI infections than age-matched controls. Severely malnourished children are at risk for a variety of serious infections. And history and physical examination findings should guide the lab evaluation. So basically, after you take a thorough history and do a physical examination, that's what's going to guide you on your lab evaluation, okay? So simple screening tests are recommended to identify common illnesses that cause growth failure and to search for medical problems resulting from malnutrition. So initial tests would include complete blood count, screening for iron deficiency, anemia, and lead toxicity, urinalysis, urine culture, and serum electrolytes to assess renal infection or dysfunction, thyroid stimulating hormone, liver function test, and a protein purified derivative PPD test to screen for TB. HIV testing is also indicated. For children with diarrhea, abdominal pain, or malodorous stools, a stool sample for culture and over and parasites may be indicated. A review of the child's newborn screen may also be warranted. Observation during feeding and home visitation, if possible, is of great diagnostic value in assessing feeding problems, food preferences, mealtime distractions, unusual or disruptive parent-child interaction, and the home environment. So under management, what are our goals of management? So it is nutritional rehabilitation, treatment of organic causes if present, remedial measure of psychosocial factors. Indications for hospitalization include severe malnutrition, diagnostic and lab evaluation needed for organic causes, lack of catch-up growth during outpatient treatment, suspected child abuse or neglect. So ideally, we don't usually admit them, okay? So we have indications for hospitalizations, which are these, okay? Management of this patient depends on the underlying cause. And treatment must address the child's nutritional requirements and the social issues of the family. Initial treatment should focus on the nutritional and medical management of the child while engaging the family in the treatment plan. So as much as you're going to focus on the nutritional and medical management of the child, you need to ensure you also consult the family, okay? Nutritional management is the cornerstone of treatment regardless of the etiology. Children with failure to thrive may require more than 1.5 times the expected calorie and protein intake for their age for catch-up growth. Additionally, vitamin and mineral supplementation is needed, essentially during catch-up growth. In general, the simplest and least costly approach to dietary change is warranted. So prognosis, if managed early and adequately, prognosis for physical growth recovery is good. However, the outlook for cognitive, emotional, and behavioral development is variable and less certain. The growth and development of these children should be monitored regularly. So that's all about failure to thrive. Thank you.